Hello sleepyheads, tonight we drift between two hearths, Egypt's courtyards with clay braziers and Rome's tiled rooms warmed from below. Although separated by the Mediterranean, Rome and Egypt shared more than trade, they shared similar seasonal rhythms. Winter nights in Rome could chill you to the bone, but even in the Nile Valley, desert air could bite at sundown. For both civilizations, staying warm wasn't just comfort, it was survival. Before settling beneath linen and wool, offer a small ritual of your own. Tap like and subscribe if quiet histories keep the dark at the door, and whisper in the comments from which corner of the world and what are the stars keep time there. It's a comfort to imagine this circle stretching from delta to desert. Now, dim the lamp, move it away from the bedding, and tuck the brazier where sparks cannot kiss the curtain. The courtyard has already swallowed its last ribbon of light. The walls give back a little warmth like a tired animal breathing through its nose. Daytime stone was generous an hour ago. Now it begins to forget. We'll walk both nights, the Nile's sudden chill and the Tiber's damp insistence, trusting small inventions to keep the cold at bay until morning climbs brick and stone. The myth arrived before you did. Egypt is always hot. The river is a kindly serpent. The desert is a hearth that never goes out. Tonight the myth blinks and looks away. The desert does not keep promises after sunset. It empties the heat into the sky and asks for nothing back. The courtyard is a shallow bowl where the last warmth curls into smoke and climbs a palm. Somewhere beyond the roofline, stars push their white pins through a cloth that does not feel the cold. You do. Your hands learn the routine before your mind. Fingers pinch the lamp wick to quiet it. Another hand slides the clay lid over the jar until it ticks and settles. The brazier, a red mouth, is set into a low ring of damp sand so nothing strays from it. You shake out the second linen, the one with the stiffer hand and the stubborn hem. It smells like work, like dye and river reeds, like long afternoons on a line, wind hammering color into fiber. You lay it over the first layer and feel the weight answer the night. Linen that flirted with the breeze at noon now sits on you as if to keep you from getting up and making trouble. The floor under your feet is a woven field. Rush mats whisper when you cross them in the blue hour. They hold a memory of summer swamp and the knife that shaved them thin. Each step is a hiss and a hush. The wall is cool. Your shoulder pays attention when it brushes mud plaster that drank the day and is not yet satisfied. There is a faint sour hiding there, the breath of damp plaster wicking the night air through hairline cracks, a small patience at work, the room trading itself with the world. Outside, the courtyard brazier exhales a sweetness that does not belong to winter. Dry reed and dust, warmed until they soften, marry the darker scent of charcoal and date pits. Someone fed it too eagerly, then smoothed it like a child's cowlick. The ember bed glows the color of pomegranate skins. A clay pot stand creaks the way old furniture confesses. Beyond the enclosing wall, jackals practice distance. Their vowels carry along the canals and return thinner, as though sound could also catch a chill. A wind slips into the alley and tries on each doorway like a cloak. Households pivot to night defense. That is the spine of winter on the Nile, the quick turn between afternoon and afterthought. A mother lifts the rolled mat and tucks it to close the door gap where cold likes to crawl. A father drags a reed screen to tame a draft and steadies it with a shard and a prayer. A child, made into a useful animal by small hands, is sent to fetch the clay jar from the shadow. You set a ring of damp sand under the brazier to trick fate into minding its own business. Someone tests the embers with a stick and learns the heat by the sound it makes when it sighs and shifts. Someone tries to push the flame to tomorrow and makes a little grave of ash over one stubborn coal. In the morning, that coal will be a memory with a pulse. The clothes that took you to the river and back have another life in them now. That cloak meant for the walk home becomes a roof over sleeping bones. The loose linen dress that wanted the breeze is now less generous. It complains, but it stays. You find the seam that scratches and arrange it to lose the argument with your skin. The second layer remembers the dye house, a roughness where vats steamed and hands wrung water from cloth, a trace of blue that thinks it is still a plant. You turn the fabric until the weight sits evenly across your chest and your back learns there is such a thing as covered. You listen for the clay. The lid you placed on the water jar cools in little clicks as edges change their mind. The cup that sat in the brazier's shadow lifts heat into your palm, not enough to burn pride, just enough to tell you what to do with fingers. Oil in the lamp becomes a small animal that settles when you look at it. You picture the lamp too close to the bedding and move it again. Habit is a priest in a simple temple. No incense, only rules that keep the nights from becoming stories. The day you are leaving behind had mercy. The sun on stone stepped down into you like a friend who knows your doorway. The river was a mirror that could afford the grease of your hand. The mud brick walls did their trade fairly, took light, gave shade, was slow to anger. It lulled you. It suggested there would be more. Then the edge dropped. The light quit. The heat left without the courtesy of a note. You could pretend this is tragedy, but it is only the contract working as written. The night offers a different law. It hears every cough as a suggestion for more silence. It counts your blankets. It tests your doors. It asks what you will do with the space between your breath and your next one. You answer with small inventions, with a reed-stuffed mattress that crackles a little under the shoulder and agrees to support you, with a woven headdress that keeps the back of your neck from courting damp, with a corner of linen pulled down not for modesty but for physics. Warmth is a geometry. You share it like bread. Someone in a temple across town, a scribe with ink-stained fingers, rubs their hands before touching papyrus. Cold does not care how often they counted the day. Someone in a noble compound arranges servants and pot stands and a better clay dish to keep sparks off a better floor. The rules are the same. Beyond the fields, a farmer walks his last circuit and holds his breath to hear if the goats complain. The animals draw their own maps of heat and follow them. The river has a skin that thickens under moon. You step outside long enough to know the edge of your world. The courtyard wall gives you a rectangle of sky where the stars practice staying still. The air changes when you cross the threshold. Inside, date syrup smoke, warm dust, the oily patience of lamp flame. Outside, a cleaner cold that erases the story of the room and remembers only the stone. Your feet understand the difference first and argue with your mind on behalf of the mats. You stand there and let your breath show you its shape, a short ghost that hurries to leave. In the alley, someone sets down a pot a little too firmly. Sound travels farther at night, not because it wants to, but because there is less to catch it. Back inside, you rehearse the morning. The ember under ash will be asked to be a sun. The lamp will be coaxed, not commanded. The courtyard will take its turn as a kitchen and then as a small square of theater where garments meet air. Winter is not a season that owns the day here. It is an arrangement that owns the hour when the light is a bruise and the walls decide whether to be friends. You have learned what the elders say without needing to hear them tonight. Carry heat from the afternoon into the room. Do not make a fire where sleep lives. Let the courtyard do what sky is for. Your body remembers another year when a wind came down from nowhere and made everyone promise not to trust clear weather. It remembers a night when a jar cracked at the lip and you drank clay and did not complain because the water was colder than the story. It remembers choosing the bed place by the interior wall and the way your mother slid a rolled mat into the corner to soften the draft. It remembers that warmth is not always a thing you own. Sometimes it is a thing you borrow from your neighbor's shoulder and repay with your back against theirs. The last sounds of the room line up for inspection. A sleeping child's breath navigates through a stuffy nose. A coal collapses and writes a tiny red letter that no one will read. The clay lid gives one last click and decides to be quiet. Outside, a jackal changes its mind about a path and leaves the sentence unfinished. You lower yourself onto the mat. The reed crackle lifts under your shoulder blades and settles, like a promise you can almost afford to keep. The linen finds your skin and makes a treaty. You push your cold toes against a warmer calf and both of you accept the terms without complaint. The night has its gods. The stars do their work for the sky and the temples write hymns that make the sun sound like a negotiator. The houses do not ask for that attention. They ask for enough. A brazier lit low and watched by someone who has learned what caution smells like, a door that fits its frame with a felt made from old cloth, a corner of cloth that will not slide where it is not wanted. These are the altars that accept offerings of patience, not blood. If you listen for long enough, you can hear the room choose you. The walls soften a little where your breath touches them. The mats stop being strangers and become geography. The air inside has a different age than the air outside. It has been used and warmed and forgiven. You tug the second linen higher to your chin and tuck the edge under itself so it cannot wander. You place your hand where the bed knows it and tell your body what it wanted to hear all along. The cold can stand at the threshold and knock until it gets bored. Tonight the stars do the heating for the gods, not for houses. The cold does not negotiate, it teaches. You feel the room listening to your breath and decide to give it something steadier to hear. The wall is cool on your shoulder, the mat whispers under your feet, and the ember under ash holds its small red opinion. You move the way older hands taught without speaking, in a circle, from cloth to bed to fire to door, then back again to check your own work, because winter is a test graded by drafts. Start with the bed. Lift the linen and shake it like you are scattering a bad dream. Grit flicks out in a tiny hail and vanishes into the corners. The fabric remembers the dye house. It rasps along your knuckles and leaves a ghost of river on your palms. You unfold the heavier layer and lay it so the seam runs away from your neck. Warmth is a map, and seams are small hills that try to steal it. The reed-stuffed mattress greets your hands with husk crackle under the shoulder blades, a dry, domestic thunder. You press along the edges where the weave loosens, then roll the mat's lip into a soft ridge to block the door gap where cold likes to crawl like a cat with thin ideas. You set the woven headrest where it will find your neck, a cool crescent that denies drafts and keeps sweat from courting night air. It is not softness you want, it is distance between skull and damp. The courtyard asks for its turn. The brazier waits like a dog that knows its name. Charred acacia and dung fuel, sharp, mineral, stubborn, coil up the wall in a slow brown ribbon that forgets to leave. You run a wet finger along the ground and draw a ring of damp sand, a boundary for sparks and a promise to the floor. The brazier breathes like a sleepy animal when you stir the coals, a brief red brightening, a sigh, a dim again. A pot stand creaks as you settle it, its legs arguing with the tile, then agreeing. You learn the coal by sound. A hard ember clicks like pottery, a softer one hushes, ash whispers when it collapses into itself. You do not chase flames, you invite patience. You pinch a thumb and forefinger into ash, find one living coal, and roof it with pale dust until it blinks slowly, the way a reptile pretends not to be awake. Morning is hidden there on purpose. Back inside, the room is a small workshop with a single craft, keeping the threshold honest. You test the door. Its reed screen shivers, then steadies when you lean a carved shard against the frame. You tug a rag of old linen into the sill like stuffing a wound with cloth. The draft moves along the wall looking for a mistake and does not find one loud enough to laugh at. A child coughs. The sound is a tiny wooden mallet on a hollow box. You answer with water that remembers noon. Set the cup near the brazier for a moment so it stops pretending to be river. Around you, the toolkit arranges itself into a liturgy. Heavy linen for the bone, reed mattress for the earth, headrest for the air between breath and stone, brazier for the stubborn little sun that human hands can afford. You kiss your teeth at the memory of a night when someone trusted a tall flame and learned the house is not a place for spectacle. Not a fire to see by, a coal to agree with. You can feel the lesson in your fingertips, the difference between stirring and scolding, between feeding and bragging. Work linen becomes sleep linen with a fold that erases the day. Temple workers do it by touch in the dark, the way scribes find the right edge of papyrus without looking. Farmers turn cloaks into bed warmers, a last walk around the courtyard with the garment over shoulders to steal a skin of heat, then lay it across two sleeping bodies so it forgets to cool. Mothers count embers by habit and pinch ash over one stubborn red eye so the morning can be coaxed, not begged. The room learns these motions and relaxes into them, like a horse that knows which gate leads to water. The smell of the night is honest. Charred acacia and dung fuel. The smoke carries a mineral bite that sits at the back of the throat and says, alive. It climbs the courtyard wall and strokes the plaster smooth with a brown glove. Under it, domestic microclimates hold their ground, bread scent sleeping in a cloth, oil breathing in a lamp, damp plaster passing a secret sour along hairline cracks as it wicks night air toward its cool center. You can tell where the wall is thickest by how it smells. Dense clay is quiet, thin plaster talks too much. Your hands return to the bed and speak the last necessary instructions. Smooth the lower sheet so it behaves. Tuck the side so it cannot slip north in the night. Place the headrest exactly where your neck will find it in the dark without consulting your eyes. Cup your palm and pat the mattress. The husks answer in tiny winters of sound. Put the child nearer the interior wall where the breath of the house is warmer. Slide your own legs behind there so you become a long, slow curl of heat. Warmth is not owned, it is pooled. The door is the last clause in the contract. You open it the width of your fingers and listen to the outside, learn that it is not welcome in here. Then you close it quietly, not to offend, but to assert. The latch is simple and very proud of being enough. The pot stand creaks one more time, wood and clay settling into an agreement. The brazier breathes when you stir the coals and then resumes its slow animal sleep. You study the glow through the grill, count your heartbeats to the pulse of the ember, and decide that both are doing the job. There is always one more check. Always one more pass of the palm along the floor to feel for a stray spark. One more squint at the curtain to see if it has thoughts above its station, one more test of the reed screen's fit. You are not superstitious, you are thorough. Winter rewards a boring mind. The ritual has the weight of prayer because it keeps you alive, not because someone told you it was beautiful. Each act is a bead, and you pull them one by one until the night becomes a necklace you can wear without cutting your throat. Listen. The house tells you its inventory. A child coughs again, softer. The cough has learned it is outnumbered. The brazier exhales and then pretends to sleep. A dog in the lane barks at a shadow and changes its mind. The wind lifts the reed screen and sets it down very gently as if to apologize. You smell the coal mellow, the acacia resign, the dung fuel finish its sentence with a period. The room cools the back of your hand and warms the palm because you have arranged it that way. You step into the courtyard once more, not to adjust, but to tell the cold that you see it. The smoke has found its quiet angle and climbs like a line drawn by a patient schoolchild. The sky is a bowl turned upside down and hammered with stars. The wall returns your body heat in a thin layer that follows you like a tame cat. You tip a bit of ash with 2 fingers to be certain the ember is under it, and the ash answers with a small blush. Morning has been placed where it can be found. Back inside, you soften your steps so the mats only whisper. The linen answers your hands the way an old friend does, with a complaint that is really affection. You lay down and feel the reed-stuffed mattress echo your shoulder blades, a dry crackle that promises to hold the shape of your rest. The headrest cools the nape and refuses to let drafts take liberties. Your toes hunt for another pair of toes, and when they find them, both pairs become less brave and more comfortable. You pull the heavy cloth high enough that it silences the part of your chest that likes to worry. Now you practice stillness. Not the kind that freezes, the kind that convinces the air to stay. You count breaths until the room forgets to measure them. You think of all the houses up and down the canal performing the same liturgy with different hands, older hands that shake the linen to shoe grit, roll the mat edge to block door gaps, nest braziers in rings of damp sand, fold temple work into sleep, turn cloaks into bed warmers, pinch ash over single ember, close doors so softly even the cold must be polite. The city is a constellation of small red hearts beating under clay, each guarded by someone who learned caution by touch. The night tests the latch once, twice, then grows bored with being refused. The wall gives back a breath of warmth it stored from late afternoon. The child's cough dissolves into the thicker syllables of sleep. The brazier's breath slows until it is only a suggestion, the ember listening with one eye shut. You let your hand rest open on the linen so it does not make a fist against a dream. The last check happens without looking, a soundless agreement between cloth and skin, coal and ash, door and jamb. The dark stands there counting and finds that it cannot keep up with your careful arithmetic. You have not lit a blaze to boast or cast shadows like a play. You have made a circle and filled it with patient things that know their tasks and refuse to be dramatic. Not a fire to see by, just enough to convince the dark it is outnumbered. The house settles into its slow animal breathing, and you learn to breathe with it. Night has been arranged, doors tuned tight, embers convinced to wait. Morning will ask for the same care in reverse, because the rhythm here is simple. The day forgives, the night demands a plan. You wake in the pale hour when the room turns from black to cold blue, and your first sensation is touch, the reed under your shoulder, a dry crackle like tiny frost in a field. You lift your head and the woven rest is cool on the neck, denying draughts with its small arc of stubbornness. Your fingers go to the water jar, and the lip bites them numb before the water can. The brick beside the door gives you nothing, only grit and a reminder that it hoarded what heat it could and spent it before midnight. Smell travels first. Bread steam at dawn collides with stone-cold air and makes its own weather in the room, warm, yeasty breath meeting a wall that still remembers night. Lamp oil at the end of its patience turns metallic on the wick, a thin, iron taste that tells you it is time to let the flame rest. Outside, the river starts its metronome. Oars clap the Nile at first light with a hollow, steady sound that belongs to work and ferrymen and errands that cannot wait for warmth. Geese mutter along the bank, an old domestic argument started before the sun rose. Somewhere, a priest's sandal slaps cool paving in a rhythm that says the doors will open and the words will begin whether the air is ready or not. You rub your hands before touching anything that asks for care. Scribes do this in rooms where papyrus waits, breath held, fingers warmed over lamp mouth so the first touch does not shock the fibers into curling. The scroll unrolls like a slow river and your hands remember the lesson. Never hurry a material that carries memory. In the fields, laborious share cloak corners for the first minutes, a quiet admission that warmth can be pulled like grain. A shoulder offered is not charity here. It is a tool, as practical as a hoe or a bucket. Children wake too to a reed mat under a grown man's cloak, small heels pressed behind a larger knee to learn the geometry of being warm, curve into the curve that keeps you. The sun arrives and forgives every plan you made overnight. Mud brick warmed at noon gives a soft, generous palm to your shoulder when you lean against it. Courtyards become kilns for people and vessels and bread. The wall holds the day like a jar of light, not magic, only thickness and patience. It is a bank where heat is saved and spent, and like all banks it favors those who understand its hours. Doors stay open to invite radiance deep into rooms, mats are pulled to where the sun keeps a square for them, jars are set an arm's length into the glow so water remembers it is still river. You learn to keep score without numbers. When the sun steps over the wall, you move the beds the width of a palm. When the bread dome breathes out steam, you set the cloth to catch it and turn it into softness that lasts past breakfast. When the lamps taste metallic on the tongue, you pinch the wick early and trust the courtyard to do the work the flame would only waste. Midday is grace. Chores stretch their legs, voices are louder, the oars on the river move cargo without apology. You place your back to the brick for a minute, feel it meet you warmly, and understand this is borrowed comfort. By late afternoon the rules start whispering. The wall's warmth thins to a polite surface. You choose which vessels to bring inside, which to leave where the brick can give them a final kindness before dusk. Someone pats the wall and listens to the hollow places. Where plaster is thin, the evening wind will find its way. Where the mud has a full belly, you can trust it to hold until moonrise. Doors are tuned again, mats rolled to build small dams against the predictable flood of cold. The courtyard takes back its title as winter hearth. Rooms are for sleeping, not fires. That is not piety, it is engineering. Smoke belongs to open sky. Flame at night is an argument you will always lose with the roof. Work obeys this cadence without comment. Boatmen learn to load at first light when the air is at its sharpest and arms move faster to make heat. Market women wrap linen twice around their waists and tuck their hands into opposite sleeves for the walk, releasing them only to weigh dates and count barley with bare fingers that know how to work while cold. In the inscription rooms, scribes rub hands before touching a name that must be exact, because a mistake made with numb fingers is a mistake that lives longer than comfort. Quarrymen lean back to the sun at noon on a block that pretends to be a bench and admit that stone can be kind for an hour. At dusk, all of them become architects of small heat, embers under ash, doors checked, children nested. Sound keeps time so you do not need a water clock. Oars clap the river. Geese argue with their reflections. A priest's sandal writes quiet syllables across paving and the temple answers with doors that remember how to open. In the quarter where potters live, kill mouths are closed early and their heat is allowed to stray into alleys as a gift that no one names. In houses like yours, the breath of the brazier rises and falls when someone stirs the coals and then leaves them alone, because night enjoys punishing pride. A jar is lifted and the cold lip tests fingers again. You learn to move faster only when touching water. Touch returns to close the ledger. Sun-warmed mud brick at noon is a friend. At night, the same brick gives back nothing but grit. You learn not to lean after dark. Linen that felt like a second skin after sunset becomes simply the right weight when you lie down and pull it to your chin. A woven headrest waits with its cool refusal to let drafts undo the back of your neck. Your fingers, clever at dawn and reckless at noon, go careful at evening. You test the door with the backs of them to find the seam where the wind would like to live. You push a matte ridge against that seam. You tell the cold it may pass the walls but not the threshold. The rule is simple and not negotiable. Thick mud brick stores the day like a jar of light, but only if you have tuned the house against the wind and arranged your life around courtyards when the year turns. Courtyards are winter hearths where flame is tamed and watched. Rooms are for sleep and breath and the slow animal of the brazier, never for large fires that forget their manners. The house survives by being boring, repeatable acts in a repeatable order that make a pattern stronger than weather. At the end of another day, you feel the ledger balance in your bones. The sun gave forgiveness, shoulders thawed against brick, bread steamed into cloth, water lost its bite for an hour. Night demands strategy, linen layered, embers banked, doors tuned, warmth shared like a debt that no one wants to carry alone. You lie down knowing you will wake to the same exam and the same solutions, and somehow that steadiness makes the cold less clever. In Egypt, warmth is borrowed in the afternoon and returned by dawn with interest. The river falls behind you like a curtain and a different cold steps forward, not the desert's quick bite, but a damp patience that climbs your sleeves and sits on your lungs. You can feel the change in the way walls behave. In Egypt, they stored days like jars of light. Here the masonry sweats, slow beads along plaster, a chill that does not attack so much as enter the room and hang its cloak. Streets breathe fog. You lift your hand and it comes back wet, not with rain but with air that forgot how to be air. You learn Rome by touch first. Wool on wool, a second tunic muttering under first, a cloak edge felted by rain until it turns from fabric into pelt. Sandals become a rumor. Wrapped calves make a case for themselves under leather, socks inside shoes, wool against skin, udones supporting dignity more than style. The city edits its outfit as the sky decides what to drop next. You pull the hood forward and feel mist bead on the wool like small pearls that never fall. Smell translates the season without asking permission. Charcoal braziers exhale a bitter sweetness into rooms that taste like coin, iron, ash, a whisper of yesterday's wine. Wet stone holds last night's rain with a stubborn pride. The staircase is a damp spine, the landing a shallow pool of cold air. The street is an incense you did not order, olive smoke from an early pan, fish breath from a bucket, drains that think the river is their ancestor. Somewhere a baker opens the mouth of his oven, and the city answers with noses. Sound does the rest. Water goes down terracotta spouts with a throat noise that belongs to roofs and gods. A brazier pan rings when someone sets it on tile, then hushes as ash negotiates with iron. Bathhouse doors yawn out steam, a living animal exhaling into the forum, a promise of heat that carries olive oil and stories. A gate squeals and forgives itself. Footsteps take the measure of slick paving, slow, careful, surrendered to the season. Life writes itself around a round of coals. In an insular room the size of a large thought, tenants huddle around a metal brazier, one eye on smoke and one on the open window that steals heat and grants breath. The pan glows, complains, then agrees to live lower when someone lifts the lid and talks to it with a fork. A jug stands near to warm its contents without boiling opinion. A child holds hands out and learns the geometry of circles. Heat is kindest at the edge, cruel at the center, useless at the window. Someone stretches a blanket so that the corner catches every stray curl of warmth. Someone else whispers the rule as if it were a prayer, open enough to live, closed enough to stay. The street teaches another lesson. Cloaks move like tents on legs. Hoods bead with mist and are brushed clear with a flick that looks like blessing. Voices lift in white clouds, each sentence briefly visible before it decides to be weather again. Vendors tuck hands inside sleeves and sing their inventory through cloth. A donkey snorts steam and looks offended by the whole idea of winter. The forum is a chessboard of puddles, and each step is a calculation no philosopher wrote down but everyone knows. Inside again, the room has learned to compromise. The brazier eats charcoal as if it remembers summer only by smell. You set it on tile to keep the floor from thinking too hard about sparks. A trivet takes some pride in being both humble and necessary. The pan rings when moved, a bell you did not intend to ring but listen to anyway. Smoke is a tutor with poor manners, it teaches placement by cough. You slide the brazier half a hand to the left and the air forgives you. The window, a thin throat, keeps gulping the heat you make and gives you back breath you cannot see and therefore mistrust, yet depend on. Wet cold makes furniture into creatures. A stool carries a damp edge like a cat that has decided it dislikes rain and will punish you with it. A curtain drinks fog and sags, then holds droplets along its hem like a fringe of glass beads. The door swells and argues with its frame until you learn to close it by pressing your palm to the place that remembers summer. Your cloak, hung on a peg, drips in a lazy code onto a clay floor. The commas of the day fall to earth and evaporate. The bathhouse calls like a hearth too large to fit into any one life. Doors open and a wall of steam steps out, rosy with human noise. You pass through the tepidarium and the skin sighs in sentences. In the caldarium the breath becomes invisible again because it has nothing colder to argue with. Friends become silhouettes, then voices, then hands learning the map of heat on tile. A strigil scrapes oil and chill away and leaves you with a version of yourself that believes in circulation. You promise the cold you will return to it, but it must wait outside with dignity. Clothes are architecture here. You learn how to hang a cloak so it dries on its own schedule, over a line near the high gap where air moves, not against a wall that sweats. You double a tunic in the morning, then add a scarf for the neck that keeps a tally of all drafts that tried their luck. Sandals give way to enclosed shoes, and inside them, socks that argue philosophy with your toes and win. Wrapped calves are a lesson borrowed from farther north, but the city does not mind ideas that work. The building has its habits and you learn them by living. The stairwell trades warmth for air without asking consent. The upper floors hold smoke too eagerly and must be bribed with open shutters. The roof collects more than rain and announces its collection with a trickle that finds every wrong decision you made about buckets. An old woman across the landing leaves a pot of wine near her brazier and spices it with a piece of peel that pretends to be summer. She ladles out warmth as if it were advice, quietly, without commentary, enough. Outside, Rome keeps talking to itself in winter words. A cartwheel flings a lace of dirty water onto a senator's hem and receives a new set of curses for its trouble. A dog shakes rain from its back under a statue that never learned the trick. The steps of the temple are bleached colder than the marble deserves to be. A boy runs because running makes heat, and his laughter turns to a small cloud that follows him like a pet. Back in the room, the brazier becomes the sun's delegate. The metal bowl glows in places, sulks in others. You learn to rake coals until their faces turn toward one another and agree to behave. The pan rings again when set down, a punctuation mark in the sentence of the evening. A window breathes in, a body breathes out, and for a moment the two breaths forgive each other. You eat stewed food because warmth belongs in the mouth as much as in the hands. You hold the bowl close and let your face learn what the rest of you already knows. Heat smells like survival. When the street quiets, the city does not. Water still runs in places you cannot see. The spouts keep a midnight conversation with the sky. Somewhere a bathhouse sighs as doors are closed and heat is banked like money. A brazier is carried from one room to another with a care that looks like prayer. A neighbor coughs and then stops because the air inside has almost learned to sit. Wool sighs as it dries. Leather remembers feet. You lie down in a room that is equal parts cold and argument. The mattress is honest about its limitations. The blanket is heavy enough to keep one dream from leaving. Your wrapped calves unwound, your socks folded near the brazier so morning will not be a punishment. The cloak lies like a tent you have closed for the night. You make a small plea to the window to be generous and a larger promise to the brazier to be careful. The damp does not hate you. It is simply thorough. It tries the latch and the hinge and the patience of your lungs. You answer with wool and tile and the clever angle of a pan on a trivet. You answer with crowds at the baths and the discipline of opening a window exactly the width of a palm. You answer with hot bowls and slow talk and the shared heat of bodies who know how to sit close without comment. In the morning the fog will still own the street, and your hand will return wet from the brick. The bathhouse will yawn steam again, the spouts will gossip, and your cloak will ask for another day of service. Between now and then, you will sleep by a stubborn red circle and the last thin breath of a window. Rome's winter is not a bite that lets go by dawn. Rome's winter is a damp handshake that never lets go. The fog does not argue anymore. It moves in and rearranges the furniture of the air. Your body answers with layers and company and places that hoard heat better than walls. The city has taught you what works. Add weight to shoulders, add friends to a room, add water to a furnace and sit above it until memory returns to the skin. Start with the body. A sagum finds your shoulders and announces its weight like an old favor being collected. Wool on wool, the scratch of a second tunic under third, the neck wrapped in a strip that keeps the throat from counting drafts out loud. Your calves are wrapped and tied, socks inside leather where sandals used to live. The first steps feel civilized, not because the street changed, but because you did. A sleeping cloak waits by the bed to be promoted at sundown. At night it is a roof for two faces facing opposite ways, tugged gently to share the warm pocket of breath between them. Home borrows a sun made of iron. The brazier is parked on a tile set to spare the floor, square on square, logic on logic. Charcoal and iron make a domestic weather, an odor of metal warmed until it remembers work, a sweetness that rides the edge of smoke and does not quite apologize. You half open the window because a room must choose the living over the comfortable. The pan rings when it meets tile, a small bell that signals the evening shift. You rake coals until their faces glow in agreement, then leave them to their quiet arithmetic. Night rearranges the bed the way the market rearranges stalls, tightly, with intention. A family sleeps head to foot under one blanket, turning as a flock, inhaling warmth from the same bowl of air. A sleeping cloak is tugged to follow a shoulder when the shoulder forgets. Hands find the edge, give it back to the coldest back. The small one in the middle is the ember everyone banks. Breath makes a tent no builder can match. The city keeps a larger fire for everyone. Baths are winter's civic fireplaces, warmth first, washing second. The threshold opens and the air changes sides. Olive oil, steam, skin, tile, eucalyptus and gossip, these are the scents of truce. The caldarium speaks in drips that count slower than clocks. The hypocaust whispers up from the floor where slaves feed it with wood and patience. A strigil scrapes oil and chill away and leaves a skin that thinks it belongs here again. You float in vapor and remember Rome is a machine that makes warmth out of crowds and engineering. You learn the schedule the way children learn corners. Men chase heat by hour and habit, women by different doors and different times, everyone by custom that protects modesty and still honors the need to thaw. A friend becomes a silhouette behind a veil of steam and then a voice. You sit on ledges that learn to hold heat and lean into tile that answers the shoulder the way a good sentence answers a question. For a while the cold outside becomes a rumor that cannot find you. Back home, the strategies continue. A second and third tunic are not luxury, they are tools. The scratch at the wrist is proof they are working. The sagum lies by the door ready to become weather armor the moment you step out. The brazier breathes and you let it set the rhythm of the room. Charcoal answers iron, iron answers tile, tile answers the soles of feet that have forgiven the day. A pot sits near the heat and turns water into tea that admits to being hot. The smell tells you everything you need to know. Charcoal and iron at home, olive and steam in the city. Both are honest. The bed is made with intention, not decoration. Two sleep as a puzzle, head to foot so breath warms what blankets cannot find. The cloak is a conversation across the night, settled gently by hands that have negotiated before. The blanket is heavy enough to instruct dreams to stay. The floor holds the brazier at a safe distance and the window holds winter at a polite one. The room becomes an argument you know how to win, not with force, with geometry. Outside, Rome stacks its solutions like stacked arches. Crowds cluster in doorways when doors exhale heat, then peel off to take turns with warmth that is public and generous. Porticos catch the body and let rain miss on purpose. Market canopies hold steam from cooked food under a roof that talks to gutters. Street braziers simmer chestnuts because hot food is a kind of blanket that begins in the mouth and travels outward. You buy a handful and keep your fingers in the bag because you do not worship heat, you use it. Clothing is infrastructure worn at walking speed. The weight of a sagum across shoulders brings the mind down out of complaint. A second and third tunic talk to elbows and ribs and convince them to do their jobs. Socks under leather remind toes that life extends to them too. A scarf at the throat changes the way sentences leave the body. You do not dress to impress, you dress to stop arguing with the air. The baths close and bank their fires. Heat lingers like a story told well. You step back into the street and carry some of it away in your skin, in your hair, in your idea of what is survivable. Steam turns to fog again. The hypocaust quiets. Somewhere, a last drip marks the changing of the guard from stone to wool. You walk home grateful for rooms smaller than forums and braziers that answer to one set of hands. In the doorway, you feel the border. Outdoor damp rides your cloak to the threshold and slides off. Indoor warmth, such as it is, stays where you left it. You hang the sagum so it can dream of drying by morning. You test the brazier with a glance and a listening. If it breathes like a sleepy animal when you stir the coals, it is content. If it flares, you have asked for too much attention. You feed it modestly and let it forget you exist. When bodies finally surrender to the blanket, the city keeps working. Heat moves invisibly through flues under floors in houses richer than yours, and you do not envy them because tonight the important luxury is near and ordinary. Weight on shoulders, scratch at the wrist, breath shared inside a tent made of wool and trust. The cold tries the latch and finds a flock waiting. It tries the window and meets a slit that trades life for comfort at fair rates. It tries the floor and finds tile and trivet and iron arranged against it with boring confidence. By morning the fog will have written its pale signature on every roof. Your cloak will ask for the warmth of a body again. The baths will lift their veil and begin to hum. You will layer, you will gather, you will borrow heat from places bigger than the home and bring it back inside the edges of a blanket. If a room cannot be warmed, a body can be. By another body, by a crowd, by a bath. The city shows you how heat can be built like a house or borrowed like a favor. You carry both lessons home in your shoulders. The sagum's weight settles across you with the certainty of a door closing. Under it, the scratch of a second tunic and then a third, Small arguments at the wrists that mean the body will not be negotiated by mist. Your calves are wrapped and tied. Leather-holed socks that learned the shape of toes the hard way. You do not dress for beauty. You dress to end a conversation with the weather. Rooms answer with iron. The brazier is parked on a neat square of tiles to spare the floor, logic stacked on logic. Charcoal meets metal, the home's own little furnace, domestic and watchful. The pan rings once when set down, then the sound goes flat as heat begins to think. A window is opened the width of a palm, enough to trade smoke for breath without inviting the sky inside. You rake the coals until faces glow in agreement, and then you stop, because warmth prefers to be coaxed, not supervised. Beds become teamwork. A family sleeps head to foot under one blanket, turning as a flock. One breath warms another. A sleeping cloak is tugged in the night to follow a cold shoulder, and the cloak obeys because that is what it was woven to do. There is no romance in it. There is mercy. Feet find the warm hollow where a knee has been. The blanket's weight tells the body to believe in morning. The city keeps its own hearth where everyone is welcome. The bathhouse opens and the air changes sides. Inside is a weather made by people. Olive oil, steam, skin, tile, eucalyptus and gossip. This is the bath's incense. The caldarium drips in a slow rhythm that overwrites the street's hurry. Underfoot, the Hypocaust whispers, a tame volcano fed by furnace men who wake before dawn to make strangers feel like citizens again. A strigil scrapes oil and chill away. Fingers leave your skin and the heat stays, which is the only miracle anyone is asking for. There is a schedule to this comfort. Men chase heat by hour and custom. Women by different doors and times, a choreography that protects modesty and still lets the bones thaw. You sit on ledges that learned to hold warmth and lean your shoulders against tile that seems to hum along your spine. For a while, breath disappears because there is nothing colder to catch it. You understand why stories are told here. Words come easier when the blood agrees to travel. Back through the doors and into the damp, you bring some of that heat with you like contraband. At home the tools are humble and exact. Thick wool tunics and a sagum for weather that will not listen. A brazier breathing charcoal and iron into corners. A pot stationed near the heat turning water into something that understands mouths. The air carries two truthful scents. Public baths smell like olive and steam. Homes smell like charcoal and iron. Between them is the day, bracketed and survivable. Night calls the old plan. Bodies share what braziers cannot reach. A blanket becomes a low roof. The sleeping cloak tethers warmth where wandering would mean a long wakeful hour of regret. You set the brazier far enough to keep safety, close enough to keep faith. The window keeps its slit of air and you forgive the lost heat because breathing is not a luxury. Pots hold stews and porridges, and warm wine adds a steady light under the ribs. You heat from within when walls are stubborn. Beyond your door, wealth makes weather on command. Floor tiles lie quietly hot over a furnace, a villa wall hums with hidden flues. Wood smoke is drawn under floors into brick channels and leaves rooms sweet and dry. Private caldoria make winter sanctuaries where breath never shows itself indoors. Furnace men feed the hypocaust at dawn and keep it tame until night. In those houses, the day is designed against cold like a solved equation. It costs wood, labor, lives. It works. Your stair stays slick no matter how many feet instruct it to behave. The tenement's walls hold damp like a grudge, and smoke must bargain its way out of the window. Vendors' calls are dulled by fog until they are just shapes of sound. Rain washes the Aventine clean, then dirty again as carts write their names in mud. This is the street's truth, improvisation measured in knees around braziers, shared blankets on pallets, puddles negotiated by sandals that have known worse. You pass a mansion gate and feel heat leaking at the edges, a rumor of tile floors warmed from beneath, a breath of cedar where wardrobes slept. Inside, someone can put a hand to the wall and hear it purr. In the bath complexes, chatter ricochets under vaults while attendants mind the fire's appetite. At the same moment, in 100 upper rooms, a brazier makes a little red circle on iron and a family leans in. The city's orchestra plays its winter notes. Furnace men grumble and lift, feeding the beast that lives under floors. Bathhouse doors breathe people in and out like lungs. Vendors call with voices damped to velvet by the weather. Someone knocks ash from a pan and the sound travels as a tiny bell through stairwells that never quite dry. A cloak is shaken out. A sock is warmed between hands before being asked to be brave again. You stand in your doorway and practice the rule that binds both worlds. If a room refuses to be warmed, warm a body. If one body is not enough, add another. If bodies are not enough, add a crowd in a place built to hoard heat and give it back. The villa perfects the promise with brick and fire and quiet tiles. The insula keeps it with charcoal and wool and the stubborn generosity of people who understand proximity as technology. Back at the brazier, you stir the coals once and let them settle like a sleepy animal finding a new position. The pan's edge glows and then thinks better of it. The window's slit draws the smoke's attention and lets breath in trade. You pour warm wine and feel it redraw your outline. You tuck the blanket edge under knee and leave a hand outside the covers to prove to the night that you are not afraid of it, only uninterested in its terms. Morning will test everything again. Furnaces will wake. Floors will hum. Tenement stairs will choose wet. Rain will wash marble like a polite thief. Somewhere, in rooms large and small, people will bank coals under ash and turn wool into weather. The city will use every trick it has learned and some it only half believes. Different fires, same wish, keep the cold at the threshold. The fog of Rome fades to the glitter of open water, and the city's breath becomes the sea's. Cold here is wind with teeth, not mist with manners. The lesson stays the same. Warmth is something carried, traded, taught. You stand on a wharf where ships speak both languages, Egypt's light and Rome's weight. The planks underfoot are slick and honest. Hemp rope has been burned by salt and sun until it bites the palm like an old warning. Amphorae come off the gangplanks still warm from the deck and go into cool storage rooms ashore where stone resets their memory and tells them to be calm. The harbor smells like work that crossed distances. Tar and pitch live in the seams of hulls and under fingernails. Olive oil breathes from the mouths of jars that were sealed perfectly yesterday and imperfectly today. Grain dust hangs in bands of light like soft weather. It coats tongues and tells stevedores which hold has been opened. Wetwood adds its own sentence, a wharf that smells like far places and the everyday both at once. You can feel the sea trying to pull the city away by the hem and the city refusing politely. Sound keeps the ledger. Yardarms knock in a slow argument with the mast. Stevedores call names and numbers in a code older than the empire. A priest walks the length of a gangplank and makes a small circle of blessing that gulls swallow before anyone can say amen. Wheels squeal as carts line up to drink the ship's weight and tow it inland as bread not yet baked. The sea claps once under the pier and waits for the next ship to try its luck. Trade is heat with a map. Egyptian grain buys Roman winters. It leaves fields that remember the Nile's shoulder and arrives as loaves that steam into rooms that never had enough. The bargain is constant and not sentimental. Ship for ship, season by season, A rope around the city's throat is loosened by sacks that sound like rain when they're set down. In return, Roman craft sails back across the same blue grammar with answers made of metal and habit, portable braziers that turn charcoal into patient circles of red, tools that sit between hand and fire and keep both honest, fashions that show how to wear weather instead of arguing with it. Cloth and clay swap secrets like cousins at a long table. You can touch the habit inside the cargo. Layered linen learns from layered wool, a strip that wraps the throat and makes sentences warmer crosses languages without translation. Egypt's headrests that deny drafts speak to Roman hoods that insist on dry faces. Rome's iron braziers explain themselves in clay when they reach Alexandria. The form is borrowed, the fuel is local, the breath of the ember is the same. Across water, hearth rituals rhyme. Bank embers under ash, open a door the width of a palm, put a pot where warmth can reach it without getting ambitious, share a blanket head to foot so breath warms whatever cloth cannot. The ship teaches its own version of the household liturgy. A coil of rope is a blanket that never learned softness but knows how to hold. A lantern on a hook learns to be low and steady, not brave. A cook fire in a box of sand under the lee of a hatch is the same brazier from 100 alleys, just learning to walk on moving wood. Sailors sleep shoulder to shoulder in a logic that does not care about class. Warmth respects only proximity and permission. A deckhand tucks his hands under his neighbor's cloak with the entitlement of survival, and no one complains because everyone will take their turn being the neighbor. On shore, the warehouse inhales cargo and exhales comfort by the cart. Inside, cool stone licks the warm-off amphory until they behave. Bales and sacks stack in walls that look like they were built by appetite. You run a hand along sealed clay and feel yesterday's sun in it. Someone chalks a mark that means this much winter for this many mouths. Outside, a brazier stands in a corner where men settle the day with hot wine and cooled voices, and they tell each other that the sea is just another road if you know how to walk it sideways. In Alexandria, a Roman trader buys a clay brazier because iron feels like theft in summer but clay feels like companionship. In Ostia, an Egyptian deckhand ties his cloak the Roman way because the wind here plays different games with elbows and corners. In both ports, a child learns the feel of rope and the smell of pitch before learning letters. In both cities, a mother pinches ash over a coal and a father curses a door that will not mind its frame, and the sea keeps time between them like a water clock no one owns. The ways of warmth acquire dialects, not disagreements. Linen is lighter and learns to stack. Wool is heavier and learns to breathe. In one place reeds crackle under a shoulder blade. In another, a pallet accepts an argument about damp and loses. In both, the same small instruments tune the same human chord, a bowl cupped near a red circle, a hand tested at a jar's lip, a door opened just enough, a bed turned into geography two bodies can share without waking. You stand where crews meet merchants and watch ideas change hands with pay. A smith's foculus shines dull and sure in the winter light, a portable metal brazier that has learned to be careful and useful in equal measure. A potter's brazier waits beside it, cheaper, easier to forgive, proud of being ordinary. An oil seller explains, without being asked, that the bath is warmer if the oil is warmed first. A cloak seller lifts a sagum and lets its weight argue the price for him. A linen seller shows how to fold a headcloth so it makes a draft turn aside without offense. Ships talk to each other at anchor with ropes and knocks and small shouts that are not meant for land. They carry cedar and resin and pepper and the quiet arrogance of people who know the shape of the world where land people do not. But between the barrels and bales, other cargo rides for free. The way to bank a fire so morning listens to you. The way to stand in a doorway and let heat choose you. The way to sleep like a flock and turn as one when the night changes its mind. These are goods that do not show on manifests and still change cities. The water itself is a teacher. The swell reminds knees how to allow movement without surrender. The wind explains layering without words. The salt puts its handwriting on everything and dares you to forget where you learned your tricks. When you walk back into a street, the ground feels loyal again, and you bring the sea's lessons home. Nothing fights cold alone and wins for long. The victory is in circles, in crowds, in tools that know their place and accept their limits. At dusk, the wharf becomes a map of promises. Ropes are coiled, knots explained to boys who already know them with their hands. Amphorae are counted into darkness by touch and faith. A priest's blessing is briefer when the wind is rude and no less sincere. Gulls take the last words that were supposed to sit on the water and trade them for fish. Yardarms knock a slower song, and masts answer from farther down the quay until the whole harbor sounds like a chorus of wood-remembering trees. You walk away with your palms salted and your nose full of tar and oil and grain. In Rome, a brazier will be set on tile. In Egypt, a brazier will be nested in sand. In both, someone will stir coals and listen for the breath that says enough. In Rome, wool will argue softly with wrists and win. In Egypt, linen will lay its cool hand on a throat and let the voice keep its strength. In both, a window will open the width of a palm and no wider, because life still prefers breath even when breath costs heat. The sea does not care which city you belong to. It cares whether you know how to lash a thing that should not move and how to steady a thing the wind insists on. It will carry wood for fires and oil for skin and cloth for throats and ideas for nights. It will bend ships and return them and sometimes decide not to, and in all of that it will keep being the road between lessons that look different and feel the same once they touch skin. You stand at the last turn before home and look back once because the smell of pitch has a way of becoming a memory before you are done with it. The harbor throws its voice down the street, a cartwheel, a gull, a stevedore who refuses to stop having lungs just because the day is done. Your hand finds your cloak and your foot finds the step, and you carry all of it inside like a smuggled ember that will make sense of your brazier when you sit. Between Nile and Tiber the same cargo moves, how to outwait a long night. The sea's lessons follow inland, nothing holds warmth alone, and the best defenses are built into the bones of a place. You run a hand along a wall and feel what the day left there. In Egypt, a house is a memory palace for heat. In Rome, floors are trained to breathe like gentle animals. Different tricks, same purpose, build to bank heat and place every room on a winter map. Egypt teaches thickness. The walls are as wide as a man's outstretched arm, sun-cooked until the surface smells like a dry loaf at dusk. Touch them at noon and they answer with a soft palm of stored daylight. Touch them at night and they give back what they can, slow and honest. The courtyard lodges the fire and the family. Flame belongs outdoors, under a sky that forgives sparks. Beds are stacked near interior walls where the breath of the house is warmer, not braver. Roofs keep stars and drafts in their proper places, one for looking at, one for keeping out. A door thuds into a padded jamb with a satisfaction that says, the wind can knock, but it will leave empty-handed. You can smell the cycle as it works. Sun-cooked brick radiates a faint bakery at evening, wheatless bread, hot dust, a sweetness made from light alone. After a long burn in the courtyard, damp plaster dries out by morning and loses its sour whisper. The house conducts its own weather. Heat is gathered in open air, stored in mass, metered to rooms that promise to behave. When someone opens a vent or lifts a reed screen, air moves with a sound like a quiet sigh, and the courtyard resumes its post as the family's winter hearth. Rome teaches machinery that hides. In villas, the floor hums gently above hidden fires, Tiles quietly hot over a furnace that lives in the basement like a domesticated volcano. Subfloor pillars hold up a space for hot air to travel, and walls hide flues that guide warmth into rooms as if it were a polite guest. Put your palm to a villa wall and you can feel it hum, a purr of brick channels drinking smoke and returning heat. Wood smoke is drawn under floors and into masonry. The scent loses its bite and comes back inside as comfort. At dawn, furnace men feed the beast. Iron doors clank, kindling flares, air begins to move. By the time voices fill the rooms, your breath does not show itself, the luxury of not seeing winter inside. The city, too, remembers where to put warmth. Urban rooms concede to bathhouses because streets cannot be taught to hold heat, but vaults can. Baths run on a schedule like a civic heartbeat: warm first, wash second. A caldarium is a sanctuary when fog owns the forum. Hypocaust breath rises through floors that murmur underfoot and walls that exhale slowly into tile and skin. When a vent is opened somewhere behind a wall, the whole chamber changes key. A subfloor flue sighs, the air leans toward you, and the body understands it has been invited back into itself. Not every door opens into a hum. Tenement stairs stay slick no matter who complains. Those rooms improvise, a brazier's red circle, knees in a ring, stews and porridges parked where heat can reach them without turning mean. Blankets and bodies become architecture when brick refuses duty. You arrange beds head to foot and pull a cloak so two breaths can meet in the middle and make a pocket of weather no draft can argue with. The smell at home is charcoal and iron, clean, impatient. The window is opened a hand's width because breath outranks comfort. Egypt and Rome rhyme in layout even as they speak different thermal dialects. Egypt, fire outside, sleeping inside, thickness everywhere. The courtyard is the engine, its embers banked under ash at night, its floor patterned with sand rings that keep coals polite, its walls turning sun into a savings account. Night beds migrate toward interior mass that has decided to be warm longer than the air. Doors are tuned tight, vents are small and deliberate, and the roof's edge is a ruler for wind. Rome, heat underfoot for those who can build it, heat on a schedule for those who cannot. Villas push warmth up through tiles, then distribute it along planned paths. Urban life steps out to borrow heat from places bigger than the home, baths that keep winter on the far side of a wall, basilicas that trap sun in their high air and give it back like charity. City plans put warmth on appointed hours, a bath at the 6th, a kitchen lane that steams near dusk, a merchant's portico that holds a weather more forgiving than the street. The senses do the accounting so the mind can rest. Touch tells you which wall keeps its promise and which floor contains a tamed fire. Smell tells you where the day is stored, brick that reads like bread in Egypt, masonry that hides smoke in Rome. Sound tells you what the building is doing without asking you to look, a door's padded thud sealing out drafts, a flue's sigh when a hidden vent is opened, the softened echoes of a bath hall when hot air fills the spaces between words. You map your life against this intelligence. In Egypt, you cook where the sky can watch, then sleep where the walls remember noon. You place a bed where mass will cradle it and set a headrest where drafts will reconsider their manners. In Rome, you stand where the floor hums and let heat climb into your bones by consent instead of struggle. You schedule your thaw the way you schedule your errands. In both places, the house becomes a collaborator. Stone, brick, and tile learn to be blankets. This is the shared instinct made visible in earth and fired clay. Build thickness where time can live, move heat where bodies are, respect the difference between air that warms and air that breathes. The rest is choreography. Open here, close there, stack beds toward the heart of the plan. Carry ember to dawn. Let floors do what sun would do if it had been invited to stay. When you lie down, you feel what the builders meant. A mud brick wall at your back, steady, stored light leaking like a secret into your spine. A Roman tile warm under the arch of your foot, a whisper from the furnace, a human decision disguised as geology. The room settles into its winter shape, and the city around you does the same. Courtyards dim to coals, baths murmur, vents sigh, doors thud, stairways refuse to dry, and roofs hold the line between stars and drafts. It is easy to think of blankets as cloth and forget that buildings can be blankets too. But here, along these rivers and under these skies, people taught their houses to remember the day and to share it with the night. They taught their floors to become gentle fires and their walls to store the sun the way a jar stores bread. The lesson is old and stubborn and kind. Stone, brick, and tile become another set of blankets. The houses have long memories. Walls keep the day the way jars keep bread. Floors hum their small promises where fires hide. But in the end, the last hour belongs to people and their hands, to modest tools, careful routines, and the warm arithmetic of bodies that agree to be close. Layer first. Linen over wool over skin, a quiet ladder of warmth that climbs without boasting. Fingers test a coal and find it patient, not proud, a red that holds its tongue under ash. A child's heel tucks behind a parent's knee and learns the geometry of staying warm, curve into the curve that keeps you. The air changes when lamps decide to sleep. The last lamp breath before dark has a flavor, oil gone faintly metallic as the wick thins, a little sigh as the flame becomes memory. On the brazier, a strip of citrus peel crisps and gives up a scent that pretends to be summer, bright enough to convince the room that night is a solvable problem. Bread steam saved for morning is folded back into cloth, sweetness trapped for dawn. The room inhales once, then holds. Listen. A final cough negotiates its way into silence. A whispered prayer puts a name on the hope that the door will keep its promise. The street goes suddenly quiet like a held breath. Somewhere a dog shifts in its sleep and forgives the weather. The city, whether of brick or mud, decides to be a blanket for a little while. Along the Nile, the ritual is old and exact. Embers are hidden under ash the way letters are hidden under seals, not extinguished, preserved. A reed mat is smoothed flat until it agrees to behave like ground that learned manners. Beds creep closer to interior walls where the day lingers longest. Someone goes to the courtyard just once more, looks at the stars, and counts them until the cold forgets the door exists. Linen settles over shoulders with a weight that says, not luxurious, sufficient. A hand brushes the clay lip of a water jar and learns again that night has teeth. The headrest denies drafts and gives the neck a polite angle to dream at. Voices shrink to the size of the room, then to the size of a chest rising and falling without comment. Along the Tiber, the choreography rhymes in different clothes. A brazier is turned to its safest face, trivet sure under iron, the window open the width of a palm so breath outranks comfort. A cloak spreads wide across two bodies, then folds in half to capture the pocket of shared air. The sleeping arrangement becomes a flock, head to foot, turning together when the night rolls over. From the baths, the day's heat has come home in skin and hair, pooled now in muscles that forgive the streets. The floor remembers the Hypocaust, or it doesn't. Either way, a pot of stewed food has left a quiet lantern of warmth behind the ribs. The room is an argument you know how to win with geometry and patience. Touch keeps the tally while the mind rests. Linen whispers over wool, wool over skin. A child's heel finds the soft cave behind a knee and stays there. A palm hovers above a coal, learns the distance called safe, and lets the ember breathe. Smell stitches the scene, the last light's breath, the citrus curl, the saved bread. Sound decides what time it is, a cough that ends, a prayer that doesn't need to be heard, a street that surrenders. In both places the same science wears different superstitions. Open here, close there. Bank, not blaze. Share, not hoard. Sleep is not a surrender. It is a pact between bodies and rooms and the quiet technologies that refuse drama. The door is tuned tight. The vent is thumb wide. The ember is tucked like a secret in the ash for morning hands to discover. The blanket is heavier than pride and lighter than fear. If the cold tests the latch, it finds more than wood. It finds circles of knees that earlier made decisions together. It finds linen that remembers the river and wool that learned the weather. It finds courtyards that gave flame a job and rooms that took breath seriously. It finds habits older than gods and younger than hunger, performed with the solemnity of prayer and the efficiency of need. So the night passes, not because anyone overcomes it, but because everyone collaborates with it. The stars do their distant work and do not notice. The houses do theirs and are not praised. The people, on Nile banks and Tiber bends, do little things right until morning has no choice but to arrive. When dawn does come, it comes the same way in both cities, first as a smell, bread arguing with cold air, then as a sound, oars clapping or spouts whispering, then as a touch, brick remembering the sun or tile relaying a furnace's gentle hum. Lamps wake, embers shrug off ash, blankets become cloaks, and rooms unlock their doors for errands that cannot be postponed. The rituals reset, smaller than history and stronger than weather. On the Nile or the Tiber, the same science and the same superstition. Do little things right, and the night will pass. Thank you for drifting through these colder hours. If this quiet history kept the dark at the door, tap like and subscribe to keep the embers alive. Whisper in the comments where this finds the night, river, sea, city, village. Until the next vigil, bank the coals, layer the cloth, share the blanket. Sleep well.